Loving Sairam from Prasanthi Nilayam to each one of you, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome once again to the Sri Sathya Sai Media Center for yet another Satsang in this joyous month of December when we celebrate happy, holy, jolly Christmas. And joining me once again is Brother Amir Deshpande from the Sri Sathya Sai Center for Human Values.
Sairam and a very Merry Christmas to all of you.
In fact, the moment you utter the word Christmas, and if you are in Prasanthi Nilayam, I know that there will be so many devotees who would long to be here, who would want to relive that Christmas bliss. I think what you see in Christmas in Prasanthi Nilayam is so special. You find love pouring from all corners of the world into Prasanthi Nilayam. You see waves of bliss. You see that Prasanthi Nilayam becomes one big home, one big family, and people who have had the chance to see Christmas in the early years, they have seen what very, very few people have seen. In fact, I'm reminded of the blissful Nagar Sankirtan during Christmas every morning,
The early morning
thing when all the devotees do circumambulation of the mandir with candles. I think that's the only time in the year when we do Nagar Sankirtan, holding candles and singing carols. And after that comes the most amazing darshan that you can ever have in Prasanthi Nilayam, isn't it? The doors of heaven open.
The silver door darshan.
Yes.
I think one of the most unique aspects of Swami's darshans. The only time I think that it happens in Prasanthi, where the silver doors open and Swami comes out in that majestic white robe.
Yes.
I think other than Swami's birthday, Christmas is the only other festival when Swami would actually wear the white robe, and he would bless the devotees, and the jingles of Silent Night would kind of reverberate in the ashram, in the mandir, and it would be such a wonderful, beautiful, meditative time to be. Absolutely. Swami swaying gently to the singing of the Christmas carols, and it was a sight for the gods to behold.
Absolutely. I mean, the only word that comes is angelic darshan, heaven. You can only think of those words when it comes to Christmas morning. And if you look at even Prasanthi Nilayam, the whole ashram acquires a completely new hue, isn't it? You will find decorations happen not only in the Sai Kulwant hall, you will find that every institution, be it the book trust, the shopping complex, the media center, the canteens, you will find every speck of ashram so beautifully decorated.
In fact, this also happens to be the anniversary of the senior boys hostel.
Yes.
This was the day, the Christmas day, when Swami inaugurated the boys hostel, and therefore it's the birthday of the boys hostel, which is in a sense so it has such
symbolic.
Inner significance. Yeah, so symbolic, because Swami's children, Swami's students, Swami's boys, their home was given to them on his son's birthday.
Absolutely.
And so even the hostel is also decked up beautifully.
Yes.
All of the hostels and all of the educational institutions. Yes. And I think the center point of the entire celebration is the Western canteen.
Yes.
You have the beautiful manger out, and then after the evening Christmas celebrations, the whole scene moves to the Western canteen. Where devotees from around the world.
Little children enjoying in the lawns. And taking pictures with the reindeer and the Santa Claus. My God, I think Christmas joy is something that you have to be here to experience.
Exactly.
And whoever has been there can just soak themselves in that beautiful, beatific moment of being in Prasanthi Nilayam during Christmas. And today, our endeavor is in some ways to relive that joy, to recreate that bliss, and at the same time, contemplate on what Bhagawan was conveying to us on this most beautiful day that we see in Prasanthi Nilayam.
Now let us hear Swami himself speak about how Christmas is celebrated in Prasanthi Nilayam. While we are so excited about it, let's hear Swami himself speak about the uniqueness of Christmas in Prasanthi Nilayam.
You all are in Kingdom of Sai. You all are in Sai's home. You all are in Sai's light. You all are in Sai's heart. I will bless you. I will bless you in the holy night. This is your right. ఈనాడు ఈ ప్రశాంతి నిలయంలో ఎన్ని మతముల వారు కూడినారు.
Today, people belonging to a number of
ఎన్ని
religions are
భాషల వారు
gathered.
కూడినారు.
People speaking different
ఎన్ని
languages.
సాంప్రదాయముల వారు చేరినారు.
People belonging to different countries are joined together.
కానీ అందరి యొక్క సాంప్రదాయము, అందరి యొక్క లక్ష్యము, అందరి యొక్క ఆశయము ఈ ప్రశాంతిలో ఒక్కటే. అదే ప్రేమతత్వం.
But the one which unifies all these people belonging to differences is the love. And love unifies all of them, brings
ఈ
them together.
క్రిస్మస్ అనేటువంటి పండుగను అనేక దేశములలో అనేక విధమైనటువంటి రూపంలో ఎన్ని రకములైనటువంటి యొక్క ఆనంద ఆహ్లాదంతో ఆర్భాటములతో కూడా జరుపుకుంటుంటారు.
This Christmas festival is celebrated in different countries, in different ways, with a lot of pomp and show.
కానీ ఒక్కటి మాత్రం అందరూ గుర్తించాలి.
But all of you should recognize one
ఒక్క
thing.
ప్రశాంతి నిలయంలో జరిగేటువంటి యొక్క క్రిస్మస్ పండుగ ఏ ప్రపంచంలో ఎక్కడ కూడా జరగదు.
But Christmas which is celebrated in Prasanthi Nilayam cannot be obtained anywhere else.
ఇన్ని మతముల వారు, ఇన్ని భాషల వారు, ఇన్ని సాంప్రదాయముల వారు ఒక్క దగ్గర చేరి దివ్యమైనటువంటి భావముతో, దైవ చింతనతో, పవిత్రమైనటువంటి యొక్క కర్మల చేత సార్థకం గావించుకునేటువంటిది ఎక్కడ కూడా జరగదు.
Nowhere else can you find people belonging to different religions, speaking different languages, belonging to different traditions, coming together and living, remembering God.
ఇదే
and the divine
సాంప్రదాయాన్ని
way.
ప్రపంచానికంతా మనం చాటాలి.
This tradition has to be spread throughout the world.
జరుపుకుంటారు. అమెరికాలో, జర్మనీలో, జపాన్లో, ఇటలీలో అన్ని వైపులు కూడా జరుపుకుంటారు. కానీ ఏమి జరుపుకుంటారు? ఈ క్రిస్మస్ పండుగ అనుకుంటే డిన్నర్స్ చేసుకోవటము, బాగా త్రాగటము, డాన్సులు ఆడటము, కాలంను వ్యర్థము చేయటము.
Christmas is celebrated in America, Germany, Japan, Italy and various countries. But in what way do they celebrate? They participate in dinners, they drink and they dance and waste their time,
కానీ
make time
ఇక్కడ
unsacred.
కూడా మీరు త్రాగుతున్నారు. ఏమి త్రాగుతున్నారు? పవిత్రమైన ప్రేమను త్రాగుతున్నారు.
Here also you are drinking. Here also you are drinking, but you are drinking divine love here.
ఈ ప్రేమను ప్రపంచానికి మీరు త్రాపించాలి.
You should make the entire world drink this love.
In fact, as you hear Bhagawan talk about the uniqueness of the celebration Prasanthi Nilayam, you feel like saying, yes Swami, it's true, it's true, it's true. That is how beautiful Christmas is in Prasanthi Nilayam. In fact, this takes me back to one of the very early Christmases that happened in Brindavan. The year was 1976, and a few American devotees came from New York and they said, Swami, we want to celebrate Christmas with you, we want to sing carols. And when one of the devotees went to Bhagawan, Swami immediately agreed and Swami said, I will give you dinner. This was the first thing Swami said. And the next morning, there was a knock on the door of one of the devotees. There were two students standing there and they said, Swami has sent us. Please choose the tree. We have to cut it to make the Christmas tree. So that is how involved Bhagawan was. And so the students then chose, along with the devotee, one pine tree. Brindavan had many pine trees and these pine trees used to be regularly topped, for their health. So they picked one and a 17 feet Christmas tree was brought down, and Bhagavan specifically told the devotees that you go for Nagar Sankirtan in the morning. So they went in the Kadugudi village and they sang carols, and when they returned, Bhagavan gave balcony darshan in the old bungalow in Brindavan, and in the evening, Swami gave a beautiful discourse, and at the end of the discourse, as he had promised, he personally gave prasadam to all the devotees. And for the devotees, it was a feast not only for the stomach, feast for the eyes, feast for the heart, feast for their whole being. What a lovely memory. And Janet Bicker, who was there, she says, perhaps this was one of the times when Christmas was celebrated in Brindavan, perhaps the first time Christmas celebrated in Brindavan.
And I think we have some beautiful pictures
Yes.
that Mrs. Janet has sent to us.
Yes.
And they are so beautiful because there's one picture in which all the little children are putting garlands for Swami. And then there is one picture where Swami is filled with all the garlands. I think this is another very unique thing where children got an opportunity to actually put the garland around Swami's neck. So beautiful.
When we think about the message that Bhagawan was constantly giving, I think there is one very, very powerful message that you see in all the Christmas discourses, isn't it, Amir?
This will be our endeavor today to take you back through most of the discourses starting from almost 1970 onwards. And we have kind of picked and chosen what were the key messages that Swami gave. And Swami, in fact, one of the things that he constantly said in the Christmas discourse was, all of this dancing and playing and enjoyment is good. Yes, it is necessary. But such days should not be just spent away in doing this kind of celebration.
Yes.
One must ponder over what is the inner significance of the birth of one such master. These masters come and they rise up the entire consciousness of the world. And so it cannot be just, kind of forgotten that way. So let us kind of ponder over what is the message that Swami wanted us to understand. And, as usual, Swami would start with the very first story of the birth of Christ, where he would say that 3 Arabian kings came following the North Star. They come over there.
Yes.
And of course, Swami, in different discourses, Swami describes it very differently. And he says they come over there, and the first king looking at the baby Jesus, he says, he will love God. And then the second one says, God will love him. And then the third one says, he is God. And these 3 messages, Swami, in fact, he bores down into each one of these lines. And Swami explains, he says, when the first king said, he loveth God, it means, who loves God? The one who is the messenger of God will love God. And so therefore, Swami goes on to say that therefore first Christ said, I am the messenger of God. The second king says, God loveth him. Now who does God love? God will love his own children. And therefore Jesus said, I am the son of God. The third one says, he is God. And which means that me and my father are one. So Swami very beautifully connects these 3 messages, which is, I am the messenger of God, I am the son of God, me and my father are one, with what the 3 Arabian kings said.
In fact, as Bhagawan explains this in various discourses, Bhagawan also draws parallel to the Vedantic thought, the Vedantic philosophy, and Swami compares this to Dvaita, Visishta Dvaita, and Advaita. So Swami says, in the first stage, I am the messenger of God. There, the messenger is different from the master. So that is the stage of Dvaita, dualism. So there is separateness.
Yes.
And then Swami says, in that stage, you are constantly serving the Lord. And as you serve, there is expansion of compassion and the blossoming of divinity within. And that takes you to the next stage where you feel so connected to God. It almost becomes like you are part of God. God is the whole and you are a part. God is the body, you are a limb. And Swami says that is the stage of Visishta Dvaita, the qualified non-dualism. And once you are in that stage, it comes to a stage where complete that separateness dissolves, because slowly you identify yourself with the Supreme One so much that you become one. And that is the stage of Advaita. There's only oneness, mergence. There is only one thing that exists, and that's love. And that is Advaita. That is the stage of I and my Father are one.
How beautiful, right? Just the simple thing of these three stages, Swami takes it to that lofty height. In fact, there's one other way that Swami analyzes this. He says that at the level of I am the messenger of God, right, we are identifying with the body. Just like Hanuman said, at the level of Dasoham Kosalendra se, when he says, at the level of the body, I am the servant, I am the messenger of God. So that's the body level. I am the son of God, is at the level of the mind, because it's a perspective where you are able to see the oneness beginning to emerge. And eventually, when you say that I and my Father are one, you're saying at the level of the Atman, at the level of the spirit. So this is another way to analyze these three statements.
Absolutely. One other thing that Bhagawan used to mention whenever Swami used to say this is when Jesus was born, he declared himself, he announced himself that he is the messenger of God. But Swami says what he meant was each one of us, whoever takes birth, is a messenger of God. If you are a messenger of God, what you are supposed to do is to live up to the message. And what is the message that you have to live up to? The message is of service, the message is of morality, the message is of integrity. And Swami says, as a messenger of God, the sole purpose of your birth is to propagate the omnipresence of God and to always be immersed in the glory and the might of the divine.
In fact, I'm reminded of one very beautiful incident that happened. This happened with one devotee. His name is Mr. Michael McCarty. And you can see a lot of his videos on YouTube, his satsangs. He came to Swami in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the most incredible stories of transformation you can see in his life. So, he's from the United States, and he was into all sorts of what you may say undesirable activities that you can even think of, and he himself describes it that way. And so when he had come to India, he said, he started off on a world tour where he said, I'm going to search for something. I don't know what it is that I'm looking for, but until I find that, I'm not coming back to the US. And that's how he had started on the world tour. The world tour brought him to India. He was in Chennai, where for the first time he was introduced to, this afro-haired person called our beloved Swami. And, filled with that kind of joy, he goes back to Bangalore before, taking the flight back. And as he is standing, in his hotel balcony, and he's thinking, what just happened to me? I mean, is that even possible that I actually saw God? Because he says, when he starts analyzing that, he says, Jesus saw God. Prophet Muhammad saw God, Michael McCarty saw God. It just doesn't fit in, right? It just doesn't make sense to say that those people saw God and even I saw God. And so he said, I don't think this is really true. He was trying to talk himself out of the experience that he had had. And as he was thinking about this, right across the balcony, in the middle, he says, he describes it very beautifully. He says, a huge figure of Swami started to emerge. And he explains, he says, this was not some kind of a, where you put your finger into your eye and think, you're hallucinating. No, it was actually happening. Is a huge Vishwa Virata Swarupa of Swami started appearing in front of him. And he says, in the sky, on one side, the form of Jesus starts to appear. And on the other side, the form of the Prophet starts to appear. And Swami is looking at him and, kind of telling him that, what? Yes, that is true. Jesus saw God, Prophet saw God, and you are seeing God. And therefore, each one of us is the messenger of God.
Wow. Phenomenal. In fact, as you talk about him, I'm reminded of another devotee from the Western Hemisphere, and his tale is so awe-inspiring. His life was resurrected during Christmas 1971. The famous story of Walter Cowan. He was born in 1890, and even as a child, Walter was very interested in Christian Science. He was interested in country music. He was interested in history. At the same time, he was highly intelligent. He was very sharp, And he quickly self-educated himself and discovered to extract carbon from gas, and he became a big officer in the Union Oil Company, and he made millions. But every penny that he earned was earned with highest standards of morality. And even as this was happening, the famous pastime or the fame or what really interested Cowan and his wife Elsie Cowan is theosophy, spirituality. So they used to read a lot and they used to do a lot of sadhana, and with time they were able to leave their bodies and go into astral planes and help a lot of struggling souls there. And by the time Walter Cowan retired, with the money that he had, he invested and bought a 800-acre ranch in California, and he had the trust deeds and mortgage papers of so many people who bought lots on that ranch, and even if those people were unable to pay, he never foreclosed on them. He was constantly seeing how to help people physically, materially, spiritually. And Elsie Cowan says that Walter was such a great man. As a wife, she says that I can't believe myself that a person can be so good with so little faults. So that was the life of Walter Cowan. Swami says in one of the discourses, a messenger of God should be genuine, should be sincere, and should be selfless and steady. If you look at the life of Walter Cowan, it almost feels like that, he had that kind of virtues, and no wonder Bhagawan gave him the opportunity of him coming to see him. And after he had Bhagavan's darshan, Swami used him as his instrument to pioneer the Sai movement in America. In fact, he was the one who set up the Sathya Sai book center in America, and one of the very, very early devotees who put a lot of people onto the path of spirituality and Bhagavan's teachings.
Beautiful, yeah. And in fact, what we thought is we will take his story and look at, because there was this beautiful moment of the resurrection that we will describe.
Yes.
Where all of that goodness that Mr. Walter Cowan had in his early life brought him to the point where he was able to see God and become his messenger. So he literally became all of those good qualities, kind of transpired to make him the messenger of God in the United States, right? And the other beautiful thing that Swami talks about, oftentimes when he says about, what are those simple things that we can do? See, probably we can never have that experience like, Walter Cowan had. But what are those simple things that we can do in our day-to-day life to actually become a messenger of God if we aren't one? Swami says, and we'll share with you a few formulae if you can call it that way. One of the first formulas that Swami talks about is be in joy.
Yes.
Right? And he expands on this word Joy. What does it mean? Jesus first, others next, yourself last. It's a very simple formula to implement in our
God
life.
is always priority one.
Yes. Whatever decisions we take, whatever situations we are in, can we always look at it from God first, others next, and yourself last? So try to be as, kind of selfless as possible. So that is one powerful formula that we can implement. The other, I think, the other simple thing that we can do is, as a messenger of God, Swami in one of the discourses says, Jesus as the messenger of God considered that this body was meant only for the service of mankind. And in fact, he toiled and he sacrificed his entire flesh and blood for the sake of serving mankind. In fact, as you were talking about Mr. Walter Cowan, another wonderful devotee experience comes to mind. And this happens in a very dramatic way. Mr. Victor Kanu.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So, he says that, he used to read the Bible.
Yes.
And there's a beautiful story of a young, rich man who comes to Christ and says, Christ, I want to get the ultimate. How do I get it? And Christ says, just follow the simple rules. He says, love thy neighbor. He says, be a good man, don't commit adultery, all of those things. And this man kind of replies to Christ saying, Christ, from my youth I have been doing that. Is there something more that I need to do? And then Christ says, if you're really serious about getting the ultimate, then all the riches that you have, give it up. Okay, and give it up for the sake of in service to the needy, and come to me. And then it seems that the description is that this rich young man, he puts down his head in shame, in his disappointment, and walks away, never to come back to Christ. Because you may have done all of those things, but to give up something for the sake of someone is so difficult. Now it seems Victor Kanu would read this and say, I wish I don't get into that position. Yes. If at all such a thing comes to my life. And that's exactly what happens to him. He and his wife are sitting at Swami's lotus feet, and they say, Swami, we want to do this, and we want to set up a school, the very famous school in Zambia. This was before that. And Swami says, yes, do it. So Swami, we don't have the money for it. He says, sell all your things. Sell all your properties in London and go set up, that school. And then, and this is exactly the time when Victor Kanu thinks, now my moment has come.
Yes.
And that's what he did.
Yes.
Victor Kanu goes back, sold all his properties in London, in UK.
With no second thought.
No second thought. Comes to Zambia and sets up that very, very famous school, which is called the magic school.
Miracle school.
The miracle school. And to the extent that even that much money is not enough, so they even take a loan. Swami says, go ahead and do that. Yeah. But the first thing that we need to do as messengers of God is joy, and that joy in service to our fellow man. As Swami says, all I want you to do is 3 things. What is the first thing? Do good to those who have done harm to you. Yes. Right? That is so difficult. Do good to those who have done harm to you, because what it does, Swami goes on to explain. Swami says, what it does, it purifies your heart. Right? All of that hatred and malice that you have against someone will go away if you do good to someone who has done harm. Number 2, the second one Swami says is, it has 2 subdivisions. One is, forget what evil others have done to you, and forget what good you have done to others. The reason Swami says for the first one, forget the evil that others have done to you, is it will remove the attitude of vengefulness and that this wanting to get a revenge. That will be go away from you. And obviously the second one, the inner significance of what good you have done to others, forget about it. First of all, Swami is saying, do good to someone who has done harm, and forget about that good, because that will what is reducing your ego.
Yes. And the third important thing is gratitude. I think gratitude is something Swami continuously emphasized on, especially whenever we are speaking to the students. And you said you have to be grateful to your parents, you have to be grateful to society, you have to be grateful to every person. You are not just an individual being on the planet. You are connected to every person, and you are what you are because so many people knowingly, unknowingly have done so much. And I think that is something that you see in Jesus' life, and that is something that Swami mentions, that if you want to be a messenger of God, you have to see that this attitude of gratitude becomes a part of you. Let me go back to the story of Mr. Cowan. So I mentioned how Cowan was all the time interested in helping souls in various planes, in the astral planes. And it used to happen that both Walter and Elsie, they used to go to various spiritual masters. And what they found was every master was only able to help them to a certain extent. With every master, there was a limitation. And on one occasion, Elsie Cowan, she prayed. She said, whoever you are, the highest master of all the planes, I need you, because I need you to support me when I am doing all this work to help all these souls. And she says, when she called out, she saw the image of Bhagawan. She had not known Bhagawan. And the next morning, someone comes and gives her a book on Bhagawan. And she just reads that book from cover to cover. And in next 3 months, they come to Prasanthi Nilayam. They stay in Prasanthi Nilayam for 3 months, and that's how their journey begins. From 1967 to 1971, they visit Prasanthi Nilayam 13 times, and every time Bhagawan used to give them opportunity of interview. And on one occasion, when Walter was worrying about something, Swami, in a very stern voice, Swami told Walter, Cowan, if you worry, I will not do a thing for you. If you worry, I will not do a thing for you. And that hit Walter Cowan so hard that from that moment, he just surrendered everything to Swami. In fact, I remember, whenever we are hit with problems, we always say, "Oh God, I have a big problem." What Swami wants us to all the time feel is, we should always say, "Oh problem, I have a big God." I think that if we can derive the strength from the source, from the Father, then the connect between our soul and Father happens. We are in the stage of being the Son of God, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's beautifully said. And in fact, I think in Walter Cowan's life, probably that moment would be, the turning point where you start identifying more and more with that power, which is nothing but your Father.
Yes.
In fact, this being fearless, to have that courage, is something that Swami would tell often in his discourses. He would narrate the story of Jesus Christ himself as a boy of 12. His parents had taken him to a celebration at the temple in Jerusalem, and the huge crowd, and the boy gets lost. We all know the story. The boy gets lost, and the mother is frantically searching for Jesus. And after a while, she finds Jesus sitting in a temple and listening to a spiritual talk, which one of the priests is giving. And so she goes and she hugs Jesus, and she says, "Where were you? I was so worried. I thought I lost you." And Jesus says, "We are in his home. Why should you worry, mother?" And Swami so beautifully narrates this point that once we are in the home of our Father, there should be no worry at all. So if you are able to actually create Prasanthi Nilayam everywhere, which means we are in Father's home, and therefore there is no need to worry at all, because He knows what is best for us. So this is one story that Swami would often narrate, which he would go on to say that because Jesus identified himself as the Son of God, there was no fear. Now, we have heard many stories, right? There was this little girl, the plane starts to, go into turbulence. All the other people are very afraid. But the person sitting there says, "How come you are not so afraid?" He says, "Because my father is the pilot."
Yes.
Right? So when you are able to identify that relationship, that I am the son of my Father, all of the worries go away.
I have the support.
Exactly. I have the ultimate support.
Ultimate support.
And that is what brings us to the next point, which is once we know that we are the Son of our Father, we will start exhibiting the qualities of our Father.
Yes.
Right? How often do we see?
Yes.
We look, we talk, we probably walk like our Father, right? Yes. So if we consider ourselves as the Son of the Lord, then we should start exhibiting those qualities in our day-to-day life.
Yes.
So how do we know we have moved from the level of messenger to becoming the Son? Is when automatically we are able to manifest the qualities. We don't have to put effort to manifest. We start
because our nature.
Very nature.
Very nature. In fact, again, this takes me back to Walter Cowan's story. In December 1971, suddenly he gets a telegram from Bhagawan. Swami was in Chennai. There was the All India Conference of Sri Sathya Sai Samitis, and the telegram says, "Come to Chennai immediately." And even though Walter and Elsie Cowan had returned from Prasanthi Nilayam just a few weeks ago, and Walter was actually not feeling well, but still, since it was a message from Bhagawan, it was a command, so they immediately start off. And when they reach Chennai airport, someone comes with a wheelchair. They had not made all those arrangements. In fact, Walter was feeling weak all through. But at every point in the journey, whenever he needed help, there was someone mysteriously coming and helping and giving them support. And once they land in Chennai, someone comes and helps them to come to the hotel. There, Hislop sir welcomes them and gives them a room. And they immediately go in on December 23rd, that is the final day of the conference. So they are sitting in the conference. Swami is amidst thousands of devotees, but Swami spots them. Swami comes to them and Swami blesses them profusely. So all that pain and of the journey, everything vanishes. December 24th, They go for morning darshan. Swami again looks at Walter and Swami smiles very heartily and he comes back to the hotel blissful. On the night of 24th December, early morning, 2 a.m., suddenly Walter, when he gets up to visit the restroom, as he's returning to the bed, he collapses. And at that instant, Elsie calls for help, and from nowhere, a boy in the hotel, a hotel boy comes and helps Walter to go back to the bed. But after 1 hour, again Walter gets up and he's feeling breathless and he starts vomiting cough, phlegm, and he wants just fresh air, and he starts feeling that he's sinking. And in that moment, he's struggling, and there comes a point where the body just gives up and Walter stops breathing. And Elsie shrieks. She cries out for help, and Mrs. Ratanlal, who was their neighbor, they immediately want to rush to Bhagawan, but it is early in the morning. So they go at the moment it is dawn, 6:30. And when they go to the house where Bhagawan was staying, it was almost as if Swami was waiting for them. Swami says, don't worry, you go now, you come at 8:45, we'll go to the hospital. So 8:45 when Bhagawan goes to the hospital, at that time, Walter's body is covered in white sheet. They have put cotton in his nose, in his ears, because the moment he was brought to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. But Swami goes to that room, he was in a separate room, and Swami tells the nurses, remove the sheet, remove the cotton. And then Swami hits Walter on the stomach. Swami says, Walter. There is no response. Again Swami hits, Walter, no response. Third time, Swami hits hard, Walter, and Walter just gets up. And everyone is stunned there, the doctors, the nurses. You had never ever seen something like that. And Swami says, I brought you to Chennai because otherwise you would not have survived. You died and I raised you. You know, this is one documented, even if you look at documented stories, there are so many, but the story of Walter does not end there. Walter later narrates what happened in those moments. And he says that he was in a very blissful state when he left the body. And he went into a hall where there were scrolls and scrolls of records. And he realized that they were the records of his previous lives. And he saw there was a judge and Bhagawan was there. And on Bhagawan's instruction, all his past life accounts were being read. And there, what Walter found out was, in all his lives, he was always interested in peace. He was always interested in spirituality, and he had taken countless births in countries that now they don't exist. And the most important thing Walter says is, in every birth, what was being analyzed there, in each of his activities, was what was his motive.
What was the intent?
What was the intent? The intent and the character in his every life, in his every activity, that was what was monitored. And at the end of it, Swami says, no, there is still work for him. Swami tells that judge, send him back. So Walter says, I was hesitant, but it was a command. So I just came into the body. And for Walter, that was such a turning point in his life, to just have that realization about what really happens when you leave the body. But again, Bhagawan does not conclude Walter's story there. The next day, 26th, again Walter collapses. And Swami at that point in time is giving a discourse in a devotee's house. And even as Bhagawan is giving discourse, suddenly Walter feels Bhagawan's presence, very strong presence, and he comes back to consciousness. And then Walter is taken to hospital. And when the doctor examines Walter, he says, all the illnesses that you had previously, all your long pending diabetes and all the health issues, when you died, all your diseases also died. So when Bhagawan gave birth, new birth, it was like a new life, it was fresh life. And Elsie Cowan says, Walter lived for another 6 months after that. She says, in all my years of married life with Walter, I had never ever experienced that bliss of being with Walter those 6 months, because Walter had become just love. Walter was just being with him was like always being in heaven. That was what Walter Cowan became in those 6 months.
Almost like becoming God, right?
Yes.
Becoming the Son of God is, so that is the second stage. Having been the messenger of God, he went on to become the Son of God. So he was able to, all of that which he had learnt, he was now able to put it into practice and actually be that. There was no effort for him to be good.
Those 6 months.
Those 6 months.
Naturally, he was just exuding love all the time.
In fact, I'm reminded of another beautiful story that Swami tells in one of the discourses where he says, Saint Jhon is walking and he sees an angel reading a book. And so he asks, who are you and what are you doing? And the angel says, I'm reading this book which is on the doctrine of love. And so Saint Jhon says, can I get the book? And the angel says, yes, definitely you can have the book. But when I give you the book, what you must do is you must eat it. You must eat the book. And then the angel says, in the beginning when you eat the book, it will be bitter. But as you keep digesting the book, it will become sweeter and sweeter. And Swami says, Saint John's life became like that, just like Walter Cowan's life. Yeah. And I think all of these discourses and all of the messages that we are reading, if we want to become the Son of God, it's not just enough to just, kind of read through, and we must eat it. And Swami explains that eating means digesting. See, and this is once again the Vedantic, the three-part way of learning in Vedanta, which is Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. So, one is the Shravanam, which is to listen to these satsangs. The second is to understand. Mananam is to contemplate on them. And then the assimilation. So, Swami is explaining that Saint Jhon actually ate the book, and yes, it is bitter. You see, when we start walking on the path, it will be bitter for some time.
Later it becomes nectar.
Later on it becomes sweetness.
But I think once you digest, then it's like, just like when you digest food and then the essence of the food becomes a part of you. Yes. I think that once you eat the book, once you digest the message thoroughly, then you become part. That message becomes a part of you.
Yes.
And in fact, if you look at Jesus' life, that's how it was. Even when Jesus was being tortured, Jesus' disciples started abusing the people who were tormenting Jesus, and Jesus told them, no, be alike to everyone.
He hears the voice of the Lord, which says, my dear son,
all are one. Be alike to everyone. And that's what the Father says. And Jesus hears that. And Jesus, that's why, pleads with his Father and says that, Father, please forgive them. Because they have no idea what they are doing. Please forgive them. And I accept this as your will. They are also part of your will. Everything that is happening is but different people acting as per your will. They are all instruments of your will. So I accept everything. I think to become a son of God, to have that kind of forbearance, that kind of forgiveness, that kind of equanimity, I think that is the stage.
Correct. When that starts to manifest automatically in our day-to-day life, we will know that we have reached, that stage of becoming the son. Of course, in this day and age, I think it's important to also mention that when we say son, we also mean daughter, okay? Because, a lot of people say that why only son of God? Why can't we be the daughter? Because messenger is kind of both the genders, but son of God means that we are a part of that. And in fact, to bring a daughter of Bhagawan is none other than Mrs Phyllis Krystal.
Oh yes.
Yeah, her story is one of a point exactly to tell this, that, see, probably what Saint Jhon did will not happen to us. What happened to Walter Cowan will not happen to us. To be like Jesus, we may think that it's, impractical. But let's hear a story which is very, very much practical, which is what happened in the life of Mrs Phyllis Krystal. In 1974, when she was returning back, going back home from a trip to Puttaparthi, her plane was hijacked. This is 1974. It was hijacked. She was sitting with her husband, Sidney Krystal, and the story goes that Sidney Krystal actually looks at Phyllis Krystal and says, that's it, we are done. Because one of those hijackers was about 20-25 feet away with a cigarette in his mouth, she describes, and there was a large ammunition, kind of next to him. Says, if that, Sidney Krystal says, if that cigarette actually falls on that ammunition, we are going to get blown up in the middle of the air. We are in the sky and we are going to just blow up. And the reply that Phyllis Krystal says, she said, I don't know from where this came, it just came at that moment from her saying, no, that is not going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. And then she says, she closes her eyes and she visualizes Swami, in the interview room in Dharmakshetra from where they had just come, and she just says, Baba, help. Okay, and pat comes the reply from Swami, that is from her inner conscience. The voice that she hears is, send them your love, give them your love. Okay, and in fact, she says that she started arguing with that voice. She starts arguing with Swami, saying, Swami, are you crazy? This is a hijacker. How am I going to ever give that love? And Swami says, yes, you can. And so she starts to visualize and she starts to pass on that love, And he says, as that process starts to happen, she starts to actually, in front of her eyes, she starts seeing that hijacker getting weak. Yes. And that, that the cigarette in his mouth starts to, it seems, quiver, and his hands start to tremble. Okay, and finally it falls, and he immediately rubs it off, and within a few hours, the entire situation kind of waters down. It gets diluted, and they eventually, are rescued. And she says, this is the power of love. We can manifest this. Therefore, we can become the son and daughter of God in our very lifetimes, just by manifesting and by radiating that love that we have that we have received from Swami.
Absolutely. I think when you radiate that kind of a love, I think there comes a time when, you yourself become that love. Because if you can radiate that kind of love, you are so connected to the source. Just your love can disarm a terrorist. I think that is what we saw in Jesus' life. And Bhagawan talks about this Last Supper of Jesus, where Jesus says that this bread that I am eating, this is not bread. Jesus says, this is my flesh. And this wine that I am drinking, this is my blood. And Bhagawan says what Jesus meant was, every living being with flesh and blood is He Himself. I think to feel that whoever, if there is blood in their veins, that is the blood of the divine. If there is flesh in your body, that is divine energizing you. I think that is the stage of oneness.
And that is the final stage where, Jesus says, me and my Father are one.
Because you only see divine everywhere.
And I think one easy way that Swami explains in one of the discourses of how we can be like that is, he says, look at a child. When you look at a child which plays, which moves through the gardens, which whatever the child does, one is you feel immensely blissful, right? The child itself is going through absolute joy and bliss, and seeing that child, you also, kind of experience that joy and bliss. What really is happening is that child does not have any body consciousness or even mind consciousness at that moment. And in fact, Swami says that growing up, we forget that kind of childlike purity that we have, and we end up identifying ourselves as this body and mind. But if we are able to take ourselves back to that childlike purity, right? And that is why oftentimes we see in a lot of paintings of Jesus Christ, right? He's always with children. Yes. And just to pinch the cheek of the child, right? That is joy. And so can we make ourselves into the childlike, that feeling and the childlike purity?
Yeah.
That would be one way to actually feel that oneness with God.
Yes. I think because a child has no desires, absolutely, as you said, there is no body consciousness, there is no mind consciousness. In fact, when you're talking about that childlike purity, I'm reminded of Professor Kasturi, and Christmas happens to be the birthday
of
Professor Kasturi. And his life also was a life where, he went through the stages of being a messenger, being a son of the God, a son of the Lord, And if you look at the final moment of Professor Kasturi, It was the June of 1987. Bhagawan was in Brindavan and Professor Kasturi was not feeling well. He was at that point in time bedridden. He was not able to come for darshan. And Swami sends a letter to Professor Kasturi and Swami says, Kasturi, accept my blessings. I am with you, in you, around you, all the time. And Swami says, do not think of anything else. Be always in the thought of God. That is the sadhana that you have to be engaged now. And finally, Swami says, I will come back very soon. Wait for Sai. That is the message Swami gives. Wait for Sai. And when that message came, Professor Kasturi, from that day, as it is, he was pining for Bhagawan. His pining became stronger and stronger. Swami says, wait for Sai. He just cannot wait to see Swami again. In fact, he's desperate to go to Brindavan and, people don't allow him, ashram authorities don't allow him because of his precarious condition. Bhagavan comes back and then Guru Purnima celebration happens. During Guru Purnima celebrations, when Bhagavan is giving a discourse in the Purnachandra auditorium, Professor Kasturi in his room suddenly calls Ramesh Kasturi, his grandson, and he says, Ramesh, Kasturi is dead. I am Atma. Kasturi is dead. I am Atma. From today, don't ask me to do anything. Don't ask me to eat. Don't force me. Don't ask me to do anything. And from that moment, they say, even that pining also stopped. Kasturi sir, after that, didn't even feel that no, Swami has to come, Swami has to come. He only wanted silence. So much so that in his room, they say that nobody could talk. Even his daughter, grandson, if they had to talk, they have to go out of the room and talk. He just did not like any noise. And he didn't want to eat. He was in that state. And on August 14th, 1987, that was the momentous day, when in that morning, early in the morning, Professor Kasturi was in semi-conscious state, so they sent message to Bhagawan. Swami said, no, his time has not come. Don't worry. Then Bhagawan goes to the institute auditorium to see a drama rehearsal. At 11:30, suddenly Swami gets up. Swami says, no, Kasturi is calling. And Swami rushes to the hospital, and there, as soon as Swami enters the room, until that time, Professor Kasturi was not responding to anyone. But the moment Swami goes, Swami, in the ear of Kasturi, Swami says, Kasturi, Kasturi, and immediately he opens his eyes. And he wants to fold his hands. Swami catches a hold of his hands and Swami applies vibhuti, creates vibhuti, applies on his forehead and all his body. And then Swami tells the doctors, 1 more hour is left. Now all of you just do Sai Ram, Sai Ram. And Bhagavan leaves. Exactly 1 hour later, even as everyone around is chanting Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Professor Kasturi merges with the divine. And Swami says, now do bhajans till 7 p.m. And Swami says, lock the room. They says, no Swami, we cannot leave a dead body. Swami says, don't worry, lock the room. Next morning, 6 o'clock, when they open the room, they find that the room is filled with fragrance and Professor Kasturi's face is shining. Swami says later on to the boys that I was with him whole night.
And in fact, Swami had told him that I will give you freedom, and 15th August happens to be the Independence Day, and he got his independence from this body on that day.
And what kind of an independence? Swami Karunananda, the sage that used to live with Bhagavan, he said what Professor Kasturi had was Kapala Moksha, wherein the release happens from the skull, from the center of the skull. Karunananda says that I was fortunate to see that. Never had the opportunity to see that. And Swami said, no need to do any rituals for Kasturi. Swami said, he has attained what he has to attain. No need to do any ritual.
Me and my father are one.
Same thing Swami told Walter Cowan. When Walter Cowan passed away, Swami wrote a letter to L.C. Cowan saying, Walter is with me now as light. We know that journey, right? The final stage of the journey is, I am the light. First we say the light, I am in the light is in me. Then I am the light. And I think that is the journey of any devotee. If you walk on this path of messenger, son, and the final pinnacle when you feel that you are nothing but love because you become one with the love principle.
And in fact, that is what Swami says is the message of Christ. If you look at even the symbol of Christianity, it is that cross. And Swami gives us the beautiful inner significance of the cross. He says, what Jesus did his entire life was to crucify every desire. See, the body stands for desires, the body and the mind. And if we are able to crucify that, then we will be able to reach the ultimate stage. And so then Swami says, can you give up on such a day with all of the celebrations that we spoke about, and yes, with all the dancing and drinking and singing and all of that, is it possible that you can give up one or two desires in the name of that Son of God who gave his life to entire humanity? Thinking about him, can we give up one or two desires? That is what we can do on this beautiful, holy festival of Christmas.
Yes. Crucify your ego, be free.
Be free, yes.
Be free.
So we can crucify our ego by giving up one
At least
desire.
one. So it's at least one desire.
Now let's go back to those beautiful moments of the Christmas discourses.
Those stellar moments, I think there are some moments in Christmas where Bhagawan parted the curtain and revealed such amazing things about the Sathya Sai avatar. 1972 Christmas. Swami says, at the time of emergence, Jesus communicated something to all the disciples. Jesus said, "He who has sent me shall come again." And Jesus pointed to a lamb. And Swami says that lamb signifies the sound Ba Ba. It was the announcement of the advent of Sai Baba. And Jesus said, his name will be truth, Satya. He said his robe will be of blood red. He will have this crown of hair. All these beautiful descriptions, even as Swami was saying, Swami was pointing to himself in that discourse in 1972. I mean, how much more clearly can Bhagavan communicate to us? Please understand the immensity of the fortune that you are blessed with.
Then there was this other beautiful discourse in 1996. And you will see a clip of that also, where in the middle of the discourse, Swami waves his hand and materializes a Bible which is from the 1500s. It's over 500 years old.
Yes.
This Bible contains all of the four Mahavakyas. Swami says, in fact, Prajnanam Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma are written in the Sanskrit language in this particular book. And Swami says there are stories of Christ that are not available in any other Bible that are there in this particular Bible. So that was another stunning moment from that year in 1996 when Swami materialized that Bible.
Another thrilling moment was the 1998 Christmas where Bhagavan very sweetly said that if anyone asks you to tell you about Sai Baba, you know what you have to do? Just sing this song.
If you want to tell them who Sai Baba is, you want to describe Sai Baba, simply sing this song.
Love is my form, truth is my breath. In fact, we will end this session with Bhagavan singing that beautiful bhajan, that beautiful song, which Swami has sung at the end of many Christmas discourses. And in fact, I many times feel that everything that we have to learn is packed in that song. Everything that we need to know about Bhagavan is packed. Everything that we have to practice in our life also is packed in that song. Very simple song. But I think that song itself is a Bible, is a Bhagavad Gita. If only we pay attention and we try and internalize that song, let us pray to Bhagavan that even as we celebrate Christmas, even as we relish this bliss of being with Bhagavan, reliving these moments, our lives also, like Jesus, becomes a life where we spread love, where we offer love, where we receive love, where we live for love, we die for love, and we relive only for love.
In fact, this particular song, it kind of gives us this message of this messenger of God, Son of God, and I and my Father are one. Because Swami first said that if you want to know who Sai Baba is, sing this song, which means we are actually becoming the messengers of Sai.
Yeah.
But when we sing this song, we are singing, love is my form.
Yeah.
Not, it is Swami's form, yes.
Yes.
But love is my form. In that sense, me and my father are one. So this song is actually taking us through this entire journey. Right? And so let us contemplate on this beautiful song, become that love, become that bliss. And we would take this opportunity on behalf of everyone from Prasanthi Nilayam to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a holy, happy and healthy New Year 2021.
And thank you, each one of you, for your time, for your patience, for your love, and our gratitude to every person in our office and every listener, every viewer. You have filled us with love. You continue to fill us with love. Let us together move in this journey from I to we to he. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram.
Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. My life is my message, expansion is my life. My life is my message. My life is my message, expansion is my life. My life is my no reason for love, no reason for love, no birth, no death. No reason for love, no reason for love, no birth, no death. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss